Beginner's Investor Guide series. Today the topic is on bonds. Have you ever wondered what are bonds? Why do people buy bonds? And why do companies and governments they issue bonds? And what different kind of bonds are there? And also what are the benefits and risks associated with bonds? We're going to find out all this today. Stay tuned.
What are bonds? A bond is a debt security similar to an IOU. Why do people buy bonds? Investors buy bonds because they provide a predictable income stream. Typically, bonds pay interest twice a year. If the bonds are held to maturity, bondholder gets back the entire principal, so bonds are a way to preserve capital while investing. Bonds can help offset exposure to more volatile stock holdings as well. Why do governments and borrowers issue bonds? Borrowers issue bonds to raise money from investors willing to lend them money for a certain amount of time. Companies, government and municipalities issue bonds to get money for various things such as providing for operating cash flow, financing their debts, and funding capital investments in schools, highways, hospitals, and other projects. When you buy a bond, you are lending to the issuer, which may be a government, municipality, or a corporation. In return, the issuer promises to pay you a specified rate of interest during the life of the bond and to repay the principal, also known as face value or par value, when it matures or comes due after a set period of time. Types of bonds are there. There are three main types of bonds. First, the corporate bonds. Second, municipal bonds. Third, the US Treasury or US Department of the Treasury. In corporate bonds, there are two separate kind of categories: investment grade and high yield corporate bonds. Investment grade bonds have a higher credit rating, implying less credit risk, and then high yield corporate bonds. And high yield corporate bonds have a lower credit rating, implying higher credit risk than the investment grade bonds, and therefore it offers a higher interest rate in return for the increased risk. Municipal bonds, also called munis, are debt securities issued by states, cities, counties, and other government entities. US Treasuries are issued by the US Department of the Treasury on behalf of the federal government. They carry the full faith and credit of the US government, making them a safe and a popular investment. There are different kinds of US Treasury debts there. First, Treasury bills. Second, notes. Third, bonds. And fourth, tips. Treasury bills are usually short-term securities. They mature within few days to 52 weeks. Notes are a longer-term securities. They mature within 10 years. And bonds are long-term securities that typically mature in 30 years and pay interest every 6 months. Tips are also very famous and known as Treasury inflation protected securities. These are usually the notes and bonds whose principal is adjusted based on changes in the consumer price index. Basically, tips protect you against inflation, and these are issued with maturities of 5, 10, and 30 years. What are the benefits and risks of bonds? First, the benefits. Bonds can provide a means of preserving capital and earning a predictable return. Bond investments provide a steady stream of income from interest payments prior to maturity. The interest from municipal bonds generally is exempt from federal income tax and also may be exempt from state and local taxes for residents in the states where the bond is issued. Now, the risk. As with any investments, bonds have risks. These risks are: first, the credit risk. When the issuer fails to make the timely interest or principal payment is called credit risk. Interest rate risk. Interest rate risk is when the rate of interest changes, the bond's value changes. As the interest rate goes up, the value of the bond goes down. As the rate of interest goes down, the value of the bond goes up. So it's hard to sell an older bond with a lower interest rate, and you might have to sell it at a discount. Inflation risk. Inflation is usually a general upward movement in prices. Inflation reduces the purchasing power, which is a risk for investors who receive a fixed rate of interest. Liquidity risk. Liquidity risk happens when investors are not able to sell the bond in market, potentially preventing them from buying or selling when they want it is called a liquidity risk. Call risk. There's also a possibility that the bond issuer may retire a bond before its maturity date, something an issuer may not want it. This summarizes everything about bond. I hope you like my video. Please share with others, post your comments, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Once you hit the bell icon, you would be able to receive my all updated videos and all the notifications.